It happened late one night, long after the cameras were gone, long after the world assumed Michael Jackson was resting safely behind the gates of Neverland. But on this night, he wasn't resting. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't even thinking about himself. Instead, he was on the road, alone, driving toward one place he had avoided for months, his mother's home in Encino. No security convoy, no entourage, no announcement. Michael arrived at her doorstep like a ghost, pale, trembling, cold, clutching something tightly in his hands. And when Katherine Jackson opened the door and saw her son standing there, she realized instantly that something was terribly, heartbreakingly wrong. Michael didn't speak at first. He just stared at her, eyes glassy, chest heaving. And then, moments later, before she could even ask what had happened, Michael collapsed into her arms. What he told her before losing consciousness was something the Jackson family kept quiet for years. Something too painful, too shocking, too intimate for the public to ever understand. Tonight, you will hear the story of that hidden visit and the truth behind the moment Michael Jackson fell into his mother's embrace. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional and revealing stories about Michael Jackson. The street outside the Jackson family home in Encino was unusually quiet for a late summer night. A pale moon hovered above the neighborhood, casting long shadows across the driveway as a single black SUV rolled to a slow, hesitant stop. The engine hummed softly before fading into silence. Inside the vehicle, Michael Jackson sat motionless. He hadn't planned to come here. He hadn't planned anything that night. All he knew was that something inside him had finally snapped. Something had broken in a way he could no longer hide, no longer masked with rehearsals, interviews, or the quiet smile he had perfected for cameras. His breath trembled as he stared at the familiar outline of his mother's house. What am I doing? His hands shook as he reached for the door handle, but froze halfway. He was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that wasn't solved by sleep, because sleep had abandoned him days ago. A pressure lived inside his chest, tight and relentless, crushing him from within. It had followed him through rehearsals, through meetings, through rooms filled with people who demanded pieces of him he no longer had. Tonight, that pressure felt unbearable. He had left his rental home without telling security, without telling staff, without telling a single soul. He wore a mask, a hat pulled low, and moved like a ghost of the city he once ruled. No one saw him. No one knew, except one person. The only person who ever truly knew when something was wrong with him. Katherine. Michael finally opened the car door and stepped into the cool night. His legs trembled beneath him. His breath caught in his throat as he closed the door quietly and walked toward the front steps. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of years was pressing down on his shoulders. Memories flickered at him in the dark. Running through this yard as a boy, dancing on the porch, hearing his mother call him inside for dinner. But those memories felt distant tonight, almost unreachable, as if they belonged to someone else. He reached the front door. His hand hovered over the doorbell, shaking uncontrollably. What if she's asleep? What if she's upset that I came without calling? What if she looks at me and sees what I become, this broken version of who I used to be? But he had no choice. He couldn't carry this alone anymore. He pressed the doorbell. A soft chime echoed inside the house. Michael lowered his head, breathing hard. He heard movement, soft footsteps, then the turning of a lock. When the door opened, Katherine Jackson appeared, small, warm, wrapped in a robe, her eyes gentle even in her drowsiness. "Michael," she whispered, confused at first. "Baby, what are you doing here at this hour?" Michael tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, a sound escaped his throat, something between a gasp and a sob. Katherine stepped closer, concern flooding her expression. "Michael, what's wrong?" He shook his head, eyes filling with tears. He didn't have the strength to hold back. "Mom, I didn't know where else to go." She reached for his face instantly, cupping his cheeks with trembling hands. "Come inside, sweetheart. Come in." Michael stepped into the warm hallway, and the moment the door closed behind him, something inside him collapsed. The mask, the emotional one, not the physical, fell apart. His shoulders caved forward, as if all the weight he carried poured out at once. Catherine held his arm firmly. "Michael, talk to me. What happened?" He opened his mouth, but instead of an explanation, what came out was a shaky whisper. "I'm so tired, Mom. I'm so tired." His voice broke violently around the word tired. Not the tired of rehearsals or schedules or long nights. A deeper tired. A soul tired. A tired that frightened even him. Catherine pulled him into her arms. And Michael, the man the world saw as invincible, folded into her like a child starved for comfort. His breathing became erratic. His body shook against hers. Then, suddenly, he pulled back, holding his chest. "Mom," he gasped, eyes wide with panic. "It hurts." Catherine's heart froze. "What hurts, baby? Tell me." "My chest," he whispered. I can't breathe." And then, without warning, Michael's legs buckled. Catherine caught him, screaming his name as his body went limp in her arms. She lowered him to the floor, hands trembling, calling out for help that wasn't there yet. Michael, stay with me. Stay with me, baby." His eyes fluttered open for a moment, just long enough to lock with hers. "Mom, I should have told you earlier." "Told me what, Michael? What?" His lips parted, but before he could finish the sentence, the last of his strength faded, and Michael Jackson collapsed fully into his mother's embrace. The house fell silent. Catherine held him, crying his name, unaware that the truth Michael tried to confess was something she had feared for years, and something the world was never supposed to hear. Catherine Jackson stood in the doorway of her Encino home long after Michael collapsed into her arms, her heart pounding as she tried to understand what had just happened. The sound of the front door clicking shut still echoed faintly through the quiet house. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves in the yard, but inside everything felt frozen, suspended in a moment she feared would break her if she allowed herself to think too much. Michael lay unconscious on the living room couch, his head resting against a pillow she grabbed in panic, his breathing shallow but steady. Catherine knelt beside him, holding his cold hand between both of hers. "Lord, please watch over my son," she whispered with trembling lips. "Please." Michael's face looked impossibly fragile. The dim lamp on the side table cast a soft glow across his features, the same face the world called iconic, legendary, untouchable. But now, seeing him like this, Catherine felt something twist painfully inside her. He didn't look untouchable. He looked exhausted, broken, lost. She brushed a strand of hair away from his forehead. "What did they do to you, baby?" she whispered, tears filling her eyes. For months, she had sensed something was wrong. His calls had become shorter, less frequent, filled with pauses and half-finished sentences. Even when he tried to sound upbeat, she could hear the tremor beneath his voice, a tremor she'd learned to recognize long before the world ever heard the name Michael Jackson. She had raised him. She knew when her child was hurting, but she had not imagined this. Not her son collapsing at her doorstep in the middle of the night, not shaking in her arms like a frightened child. A sudden movement made her gasp. Michael's fingers twitched. Catherine leaned closer, her breath catching. "Michael, can you hear me, sweetheart?" His eyelids fluttered, slowly, painfully, and he inhaled sharply as if waking from a nightmare he wasn't ready to leave. When his eyes finally opened, he stared at the ceiling for a long moment before turning his head toward the sound of her voice. For a second, he didn't speak, didn't even blink. He just looked at her, confused, scared, vulnerable. "Mom," he whispered. Catherine felt her heart crack. She placed a gentle hand on his cheek. "I'm right here, Michael. You're home. You're safe." His eyes watered instantly, as if her words carried more weight than she realized. He tried to sit up, but dizziness overtook him. Catherine quickly supported his back, guiding him upright. "Take it slow," she soothed. "You fainted." Michael pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. I'm sorry, Mother. I didn't mean to scare you." "You could never scare me," she whispered. "But you did worry me. Why didn't you call? Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Michael swallowed, his throat tight. "Because I wasn't sure I could make it." Catherine stilled. Michael's voice cracked again. I didn't want anyone to know I came here. Not tonight. A cold chill ran through her. She shifted on the couch, facing him fully. Michael, what happened? He looked down at his shaking hands, unable to still them. He seemed to weigh his words carefully, as if choosing the safest pieces of the truth. I've been feeling strange, he whispered. For weeks. My chest tightens. My vision blurs. Sometimes I can't breathe. And there's this. He paused, unable to continue. Catherine felt her stomach tighten. Have you seen a doctor? Has anyone checked on you? Yes, he whispered. But they don't listen to me. They treat my symptoms, not the cause. They act like I'm just tired or stressed. But it's not just that. What is it then, baby? Catherine asked softly. Michael squeezed his eyes shut, and when he spoke again, his voice trembled with something that terrified her more than anything else. I'm scared something terrible is going to happen to me. Her breath caught. Michael's eyes opened again, filled with a fear so raw it made her chest ache. I didn't know where else to go tonight. I just felt this pressure inside me, like something was closing in. I tried to ignore it, pretend it was nothing, but then I started shaking. I felt like I was going to fall apart, and all I could think was, I want my mother. Catherine pulled him into her arms without hesitation. Michael clung to her. Not like a superstar, not like a man in his 40s, not like the icon the world worshipped, but like the little boy who used to cry into her shoulder backstage when no one was watching. He whispered into her neck, I'm so tired, Mom. I'm so tired of being strong. She held him tighter. You don't have to be strong right now, she murmured. You just have to be here. For a moment, the house felt still again, warm, quiet, safe. But that moment didn't last. A sudden crash echoed from outside. Something hitting the ground on the front porch. Michael stiffened instantly. Catherine's arms tightened around him. It's just the wind, she assured him. But Michael slowly shook his head. No, that wasn't the wind. His eyes widened, fear returning like a wave swallowing him whole. Catherine, he whispered, voice hollow, someone followed me here. Her blood went cold, and suddenly the faint knock that had awakened her earlier felt much more sinister. Michael wasn't safe, and neither was she. Catherine Jackson had always believed she could read her son just by looking at him. His eyes, his posture, the quiet tremble in his hands that he tried so hard to hide from the world. But tonight, as Michael sat at her kitchen table, head bowed, fingers tangled anxiously together, she realized something frightening. She didn't recognize the expression on his face. Not fully, not in a way a mother should. The warm overhead light softened the shadows around him, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion stretching deep beneath his eyes. Michael looked older, worn, as if carrying a weight that had been crushing him for far too long. He hadn't touched his tea. He hadn't spoken in several minutes. He just stared at the table with a distant look, like his thoughts were trapped behind a door he didn't know how to open. Catherine reached across the table and gently rested her hand over his. Baby, please talk to me. Michael swallowed hard, but his voice still cracked when he answered. I didn't know where else to go. Tears pricked her eyes instantly. Oh, Michael, you always have a place here. But he didn't look relieved. If anything, her reassurance seemed to break something inside him. His shoulders shook. He drew a hitch breath. And then, without warning, he whispered, Mom, I'm scared. That sentence, simple, fragile, hit Catherine like a punch. Michael Jackson, the most mesmerizing performer the world had ever seen, who moonwalked across stadiums and defied the laws of performance itself, was sitting in front of her trembling like a lost child. She tightened her grip on his hand. Scared of what? Michael's lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, he blinked rapidly, as if fighting back tears he refused to let fall. Catherine's heart shattered. She moved her chair closer, turning his hand over, warming it between both of hers. Michael, she said softly, look at me. He didn't. So she said his name again, this time the way she used to when he was a little boy who had nightmares. Michael Joseph. Slowly his eyes lifted, and Catherine gasped. Because behind those eyes, behind all the fame, all the sparkle, all the perfection the world expected, she saw pure exhaustion, and something deeper. Fear. Real fear. He opened his mouth again, but before he could speak, his breath shortened. His chest rose and fell too quickly. He grabbed the edge of the table with one hand, his face tightening in pain. Michael? Catherine stood immediately. What's happening? Are you all right? Michael pressed a hand to his ribs, squeezed his eyes shut. Mom, I haven't been sleeping. I haven't been eating right. They keep rushing me, pushing me, telling me to keep going. Who? She demanded. Who is doing this to you? He looked away. Everyone. The word echoed painfully in the room. He lifted a trembling hand to his temple. I thought I could handle it. I thought if I kept working, kept giving everything, maybe I'd feel like myself again. But I don't. I don't feel like Michael anymore. Catherine felt tears spill down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them. She sat beside him, pulling him gently into her arms. His body tense at first, stiff and resistant. He wasn't used to being held anymore. Fame had taken even that from him. But then his shoulders dropped, and he leaned into her, resting his forehead against her shoulder like he had when he was 10 years old and overwhelmed by rehearsals. Her voice was barely a whisper. You don't have to be Michael Jackson here. You're just my son. His breath shuddered. I don't know who I am anymore. Catherine held him tighter. But then, suddenly Michael pulled away. Not slowly, not gently. He jerked back with a startled gasp, gripping the chair as if the world had spun beneath him. His face drained of color, his pupils dilated. And before Catherine could understand what was happening, he collapsed to his knees. Michael! She rushed to his side, supporting his head as his body swayed. His skin was cold, too cold. His breaths came in rapid bursts, uncontrolled, panicked. I'm dizzy, he whispered. Mom, I can't breathe right. Catherine touched his cheek. It was damp with sweat. She held his face firmly. Look at me, baby. Stay with me. I'm right here. But Michael's vision blurred. The kitchen light stretched into streaks of gold. His ears rang. His body felt heavy, too heavy to control. Catherine! Jackie's voice shouted from the hallway, footsteps rushing toward them. What happened? I heard you scream. Call 911. Catherine cried. Now! But Michael grabbed her arm weakly. No hospitals. Michael! They'll make it worse, he whispered. Please, don't let them take me. His voice was slurred. His body sagged against her. His head fell forward onto her shoulder. And then he went completely limp. Catherine screamed his name, shaking him gently, tears dripping onto his shirt. But Michael didn't respond. His body lay still in her arms. And for the first time in her life, Catherine Jackson felt something she had never allowed herself to feel about her strongest, most gifted, most extraordinary child. Fear that she might lose him. Forever. For nearly an hour, Michael sat in Catherine's living room, curled into the corner of the floral-patterned sofa the same way he had as a child when he wanted to feel safe. The house smelled like chamomile tea and lemon polish, like Sunday afternoons and warm summers in Encino. But even this sanctuary could not disguise what was happening to him. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Catherine noticed it immediately. She always had. Michael, baby, look at me, she whispered, cupping his face gently. Something is wrong. This isn't just exhaustion. Michael tried to smile, the way he always did when he didn't want to worry her. But his lips only trembled, forming a broken attempt at reassurance that fooled no one. Not even himself. I'm okay, Mother, he whispered. No, you're not. The firmness in Catherine's voice made him lower his eyes. She could still speak to him like he was 12 years old. And in moments like this, he truly was. He was her little boy again, frightened, overworked, struggling beneath a weight he didn't know how to carry. Her thumb stroked his cheeks, wiping away the cold sweat forming there. Tell me the truth, she said softly. Michael swallowed hard. His throat felt tight, his breaths uneven. The shows of pressure, his voice cracked. They keep pushing me. Every day, every hour. They want perfection. They want what I gave 20 years ago. But my body, it's not listening to me anymore. Catherine pulled him closer. His head rested on her shoulder, and for a moment he allowed himself to be a son instead of a legend. "What happened tonight?" she asked gently. Michael's breath stuttered. It almost hurt to speak. "I thought, if I could just see you, if I could just come home for a moment, it would all stop. The fear, the shaking, the pain." Catherine's arms wrapped around him, warm and steady. But Michael's own body betrayed him. His chest tightened again, harder this time, a sharp pain shooting through his rib cage. He winced. Catherine felt it instantly. "Michael, where is it hurting?" His hand moved to his chest involuntarily. "Here, Mother, it burns." "That's not normal," she said firmly. "You need a real doctor, not someone hired by promoters." Michael stiffened. The worry in her voice made his heart twist. "I can't." "They watch everything. Every step I take. Every breath. If I don't show up tomorrow." Catherine lifted his chin, forcing him to meet her eyes. "What about your children? What about your health? Your life?" His eyes glistened. "I'm trying, Mother. I'm trying to hold on." "But you're slipping," she whispered. "I can see it." Michael's breathing quickened, each inhale shorter than the last. The room felt smaller, heavier. He was losing control again. Catherine noticed a change and pressed her palm to his back. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she whispered. "I am—" Michael tried to say, but the words faded. His vision blurred at the edges. Voices from the hallway. Not real ones, but echoes, memories of managers, lawyers, doctors telling him to push harder, work faster, stay silent. Each one layered over the other, forming a storm inside his mind. Catherine saw the panic returning. "Michael, look at me. Breathe. Follow my voice." He tried, but the air wouldn't come. Catherine placed one hand over his chest and began rubbing gently, the way she did when he was little and cried from nightmares. "You're safe. You hear me? You're home. Nobody can touch you here." Michael blinked rapidly. His breaths were shallow, like tiny gasps. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he whispered. "Oh, baby," Catherine said, kissing his forehead. "I only ever want to see the truth." Another wave of pain hit him. Stronger than before, he grabbed the edge of the couch, knuckles white. "Mother," he gasped. "What is it?" I can't breathe." Catherine stood quickly. "Michael, sit up straight. Come on, look at me." He tried, but the pain shot through him like an electric shock. His vision whitened at the edges. "Mother," he whispered again, voice breaking. Catherine knelt in front of him. "Stay with me, Michael. Stay with me. I'm calling 911. "No," he cried, gripping her arm with surprising strength. "They'll leak it. The press. I can't." His grip loosened suddenly. A frightening stillness took over his face. Catherine froze. "Michael?" His eyes rolled slightly, his breath stopping for a second too long. Then his body collapsed forward into her arms, just like when he was a child. Except this time, he wasn't pretending. This time, he wasn't playing. This time, he was slipping away. "Michael!" Catherine cried, pulling him against her chest. "Michael, stay with me. Please." But Michael couldn't answer. His body had gone limp. And for the first time in her life, Catherine Jackson felt what no mother should ever feel, her child fading in her arms. The wind outside Catherine Jackson's house had grown stronger, rattling the window panes as if echoing the tension building inside the living room. Michael sat curled forward on the edge of the sofa, elbows resting on his knees, hands trembling so noticeably that his mother finally reached out and placed her palms over his wrists. "Michael," she whispered, "look at me." He tried. He really did, but his eyes refused to lift from the floor. Every breath he took sounded heavier than the last, as though the air itself resisted entering his lungs. Catherine saw it instantly. This was not exhaustion. This was fear. And whatever fear had brought him to her door tonight, it wasn't leaving easily. She squeezed his wrist gently. "Baby, what happened?" Michael swallowed, the motion visibly painful. "Mom, I didn't come here just because I was tired. I didn't come here because of rehearsals or pressure or cameras." His voice thinned, trembling at the edges. "I came here because I don't know how much longer I can hold myself together. Catherine's heart shattered. She leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. His skin was clammy, cold despite the warm room. "Michael, you're scaring me," she whispered. He finally lifted his eyes, and Catherine understood everything in a single heartbeat. His eyes weren't just tired. They were pleading. "Mom, something's wrong with me." The words hit the room like a crack of thunder. Catherine inhaled sharply, her fingers tightening around his. "What do you mean, wrong?" she asked. "Your health? Your heart? Your—" "No," he whispered, cutting her off. "It's not something a doctor can fix." He pressed both hands to his temples, trembling. "It's in here. It's in my mind. I hear things at night, when I'm alone. I feel watched, touched, pressured. I feel like someone is pushing me towards something I'm not ready for." His breath sped up, and the worst part is, I don't know if it's real or if it's just me falling apart. Catherine pulled him into her arms, not tentatively, but fiercely, protectively, as if she could anchor him back into himself. "You're not falling apart. You're overwhelmed. You've carried the weight of the world for too long." But Michael shook his head against her shoulder. "No, Mom, you don't understand." He pulled back, his hands gripping her forearms. "There's something else." Catherine's chest tightened. She could feel the moment before he said it, the heaviness in the air, the tremor in his fingers. Michael whispered, "I've been having dreams, nightmares of me collapsing, on stage, alone, and I can't get back up." Catherine froze. "And every time I wake up," he continued, "I feel weaker, like my body is trying to tell me something." The room fell completely silent, the kind of silence that presses against the skin. Catherine processed his words slowly, painfully. "When did this start?" she asked. Michael's voice cracked. "Months ago." "Michael, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to hurt you," he whispered. "And because I didn't want this to be real." He stood suddenly, pacing the room with frantic energy. "Everywhere I go, someone wants something from me. Money, work, a comeback, a miracle. And if I say no, they push harder. If I say I'm tired, they tell me to keep going." He turned, tears filling his eyes. "I just wanted one person, just one, to see me, not the superstar, not the icon, not the paycheck. Me." Catherine rose and went to him, but before she could embrace him again, Michael's breathing changed. His chest rose sharply, then stalled. His pupils dilated with panic. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't feel right." Catherine cupped his face. "Michael," breathed, "you're safe here." But he shook his head wildly. "No, I'm dizzy. Everything is spinning." She grabbed his arm, guiding him toward the sofa, but halfway there, his knees buckled. Catherine gasped and caught him under his arms, lowering him gently to the carpet. "Michael, Michael, stay with me." He stared up at her, terrified, trying to form words that wouldn't come. I'm sorry," he rasped. "For what?" she cried. "For pretending I was stronger than I am." Tears blurred Catherine's vision as she brushed his hair from his damp forehead. "You don't have to be strong with me. Not tonight. Not ever again." But Michael's eyes were unfocused now, drifting. His chest rose unevenly. His breaths grew short, rapid, desperate. Then his body went still. "Michael? Michael!" Catherine slapped his cheeks lightly. "Baby, open your eyes." Nothing. She lifted him halfway, cradling his head against her chest like she had when he was a boy. "Stay with me. Hear my voice. Stay with me." Then a faint whisper escaped his lips, barely audible. "Mom, don't let them take me." Catherine froze. "Who, Michael?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Who's trying to take you?" But Michael didn't answer. His eyes fluttered shut. His body went limp in her arms. Catherine screamed his name. The room shook with the sound of a mother losing her son, not to death, but to a darkness she didn't yet understand. And as she held him, praying for him to wake, she realized a terrifying truth. Michael had not come to her house tonight because he wanted comfort. He had come because he felt hunted by something she could no longer protect him from.
The storm had softened outside, leaving behind a quiet drizzle that tapped gently against the window panes of Catherine Jackson's living room. The house had settled into a deep silence, as though even its walls were holding their breath after what had just happened. Michael lay on the couch, pale but breathing steadily now, his head resting on his mother's lap as Catherine stroked his hair with trembling fingers. She had not seen her son collapse like that since the trials, since the darkest days of his life. But this collapse felt different. It wasn't triggered by the outside world, by pressure or paparazzi. This time, it came from something he had kept very tall on. Something Ante said out loud until tonight. Catherine looked down at him, her voice still shaking. Michael, you scared me. You scared me more than you ever have. His eyelids fluttered slightly, but he didn't walk. He looked younger like this, fragile, almost childlike. She wiped a tear from his cheek, whispering, You carry too much alone. You always have. Time passed slowly. 10 minutes. 10, 20. At last, Michael stirred. His breathing hitched, and his hand reached instinctively for hers. Mom! His voice was barely audible. I'm here, baby, she whispered, guiding his hand to her heart. You fainted. You frightened me. He blinked, trying to gather his thoughts. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. He felt everything at once. His voice broke. It was too much. Catherine leaned closer. What you told me, was it all true? Everything. Michael nodded slowly, tears forming again. Yes, mother. I've been carrying this pain for years. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to hurt you. Catherine's eyes softened with a mystery of sorrow and strength. You didn't hurt me, Michael. You opened your heart. And that's something you've been afraid to do for far too long. He trembled. He thought if he told anyone, the whole thing would come crashing down. My image, my hope, my family. He thought people would think he was weak. Baby, Catherine whispered, cupping his cheek, being honest doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Michael inhaled deeply, as though hearing those words lifted a weight he had carried since childhood. He sat up slowly, though he still looked unsteady. He shouldn't have come like this, he said softly. But something inside me, something told me that if he didn't see you tonight, he wouldn't make it through the week. Catherine's heart tightened. What do you mean? He shook his head. Not physically. He meant, emotionally. He felt like he was at the edge of something. Something dark. And the only person who could pull me back was you. She took both of his hands, gripping them tightly. Then you did the right thing. You came home. And you're safe. But Michael didn't look convinced. He glanced toward the stairs, toward the shadows of the hallway, toward the familiar cracks of the house he grew up in. It's strange, he murmured. Being here, it feels like the past is watching me. Catherine frowned gently. The past can't hurt you anymore, Michael. Not when you face it. He hesitated, then spoke the words he had held in his throat for decades. He wanted to tell you the truth, Mom, because I don't know how much longer he can pretend to be okay. His voice cracked. Catherine pulled him into her arms, holding him with a strength only a mother possesses. Fierce, unwavering, protective. You don't have to pretend with me, she whispered into his ear. Not now. Not ever again. Michael clung to her like he was drowning and she was the only thing keeping him afloat. His shoulders shook as he let out a sob he had held inside for years, maybe since childhood. After a long moment, he pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. He fainted because he was terrified, he confessed. Terrified to say the truth. Terrified you would look at me differently. Catherine shook her head firmly. There is nothing you could say that would make me love you less. Nothing. Mitchell's lips quivered. I don't want to be alone anymore, Mom. I can't keep living like a ghost. I need help. Real help. The confession in the air like a sacred vow. Catherine nodded, tears now running freely down her face. Then we get you help. Together. You won't walk this path alone again. Michael breathed out, slowly, shakily, but with relief. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a performer, or a provider, or a legend. He felt like a son. Catherine brushed his hair back gently, whispering, Your heart is too big, Michael. Too soft for this world. But that's why God made you special. And that's why I'm going to make sure you stay here. Alive, loved, and whole. Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, something deeper finally broke open within Michael. Not pain, but release. And as the clock moved past midnight, the Jackson home felt a warmth it hadn't felt in decades. A son finally telling the truth. A mother finally hearing it. A bridge finally mended. But neither of them knew. This night, this hidden visit, would be the last time Michael Jackson ever revealed his true heart so completely.